Hello, everybody. This is Joseph P. Farrell with news and views from the Nefarium, January 30th, 2014. This is take two on part one because what happened is I was recording and YouTube flubbed again and the recording was cut halfway through part two. I did save part two, so I'm re-recording part one, hopefully to make some sort of smooth connection between part one and part two. First things first, news. I have started writing in earnest the new book, which is a sequel to Financial Vipers of Venice and to Cosmic War. Go figure that one out. I have started writing it in earnest. I'm hoping to have it done by April. Cross your fingers. That means I'm going to have to be working really hard, so I apologize ahead of time if I seem cranky, irritable, or non-responsive to instant messages and emails. All right? Now, let's get to the story that I talked about in the original recording of part one today. There's two stories, and I'm going to connect them because I think this is a classic case where the media is absolutely failing to raise the issues and connections that need to be raised, and that requires connecting dots. And the article that I want to head off with is an article that appeared about the J.P. Morgan suicides and appeared in the UK Daily Mail. And I'm using the UK Daily Mail for a reason that I'll get into in a moment. But here's the story, according to the UK Daily Mail. Quote, two top-ranking American bankers working in senior positions in London have committed suicide in the space of 2 days. This is dated, incidentally, January 28th, so not too long ago. Quote, Gabriel McGee, a 39-year-old J.P. Morgan bank executive, died early this morning after he jumped 500 feet from the top of the bank's European headquarters. His body was discovered on the ninth floor roof, which surrounds the 33-story Canary Wharf skyscraper. Just 2 days earlier, on Sunday, fellow American banker William Bill Brooksmith, 58, was found hanging in his South Kensington home. Brooksmith, who retired last February, was a former senior manager at Deutsche Bank and had lived in London many years. He started working for the bank in 1996 but left for a period of 7 years before returning in 2008. And one final very important sentence from this article. Listen carefully. Quote, Scotland Yard said they were called to 25 Bank Street at 8:02 a.m. and detectives are not treating the death as suspicious. Unquote. Now, the interesting thing about that statement, you'll notice, is that it's at the beginning of the work day. All right, 8 in the morning. And that's when Scotland Yard is called. So in other words, the events happened even earlier, at the beginning of the workday. So if you read around on the internet, you're going to find out that Mr. McGee was discovered by his colleagues, and there's even pictures in the UK Daily Mail of people looking out their windows down at his body on the top of the ninth floor of another part of the building. And he was apparently in his suit. So consider what that means. We have a man that got dressed, showered, shaved, got dressed, put on his suit to go to work, and as soon as he arrives at work, he goes to the roof of the building and jumps off. Okay? Now, folks, I don't know about you, but to me that rings all sorts of alarm bells because I don't think that this was suicide at all. You don't do that. Suicides, if they're for personal reasons, the behavior here just doesn't fit the pattern. That's my point. Now, there's another problem, and the reason I'm using the J.P. Morgan UK Daily Mail version of the article is that the UK Daily Mail has all sorts of pictures, okay? And when you look at the pictures, what's very interesting is there are no open windows for this man to have jumped from, all right? There are no broken windows where he may have run through the window and plummeted to his death. So in other words, he either went to the roof of the building and jumped out, or the window was opened and somehow managed to close itself from his office after he jumped. That's the problem here, or some office, whatever. So in other words, this has to me all the hallmarks of something suspicious. Now, the other point about his colleague was his colleague, Mr. Brucksmith, worked for Deutsche Bank. All right, and that's the tie-in here that I think we need to look at. Now, before we do, I want to go to another story that I think is probably related to what's happening here. And that's a story that is headed, J.P. Morgan loses 44% of gold inventories in 4 days. This is a story that appears at silverdoctors.com, and I'll link this for you on the News and Views on YouTube and on the website. Now, the basic story here is that in this very same time frame that these two bankers commit suicide, we have J.P. Morgan apparently, for whatever reason, either selling off or leasing out or what have you, 321,500 ounces of its gold inventory. That's almost 44% of its gold inventory. And that's about $400 million here, folks. That's key. That's crucial. Now, I suspect what's going on here, really, is that this story is tied to, as I mentioned in part 2 of this redone News and Views, I suspect that this story is intimately tied to the story of the German gold repatriation issue. And I want to mention, just at the risk of repeating what I may have said in the part 2 that did get recorded of the first take of this News and Views, I want to suggest that there's 2 incidents that are informing the German government's behavior here. In other words, the German government is not playing the role of a nation wanting its gold back and then, oh surprise, shock and horror, our gold is gone. No, I think the German government has known that something is very fishy and very wrong with the whole gold problem and its role in Western central banking, monetary policy, and institutions for a long time. There's 2 incidents to look at here. The first is Hjalmar Schacht's visit to the New York Federal Reserve in 1928 with his friend Ben Strong, taking him on a tour of the vaults of the Federal Reserve. And then the staff of the New York Federal Reserve, to Strong's embarrassment, informs Strong that they cannot find the Reichsbank's gold. And Schacht, in his memoirs, which incidentally are written after World War II, that's another part of the story, says, that's okay, I know you're good for it. Now, I suspect Schacht knew exactly from that point what was going on. That gold had already been leased out. It had been rehypothecated. It was gone, all right? In 1968, there's another episode with German gold when West Germany asks for some of its gold to be repatriated to West Germany. And when the gold was returned to West Germany, it was in coin form. In other words, the bullion was in a form that you would find in gold coins. It wasn't London good delivery pure. Now, why is that crucial? It's because when you make coins, you do not put the bullion in a coin to be equal or greater than the stamped value of the coin. So usually bullion in coins is alloyed with other metals to make it impure and the intrinsic value of the bullion less than the value that's stamped on the coin. Otherwise, people hoard the coins, melt the bullion down, and sell it and get more money. So in other words, the whole point of bullion-backed coinage in currency is that it's always less than the stamped value. All right. Now, there are exceptions to the rule in history, and the exceptions to the rule in history are going to be part of the new book. All right. So I'm not going to talk about those. But my point here is that these suicides are, in my opinion, connected to this sudden gold sell-off in J.P. Morgan, and that in turn is connected to this whole problem of gold repatriation and what's going on right now. And I'll stop it here and resume in part 2. And I apologize, folks, for today's News and Views being so choppy and disconnected, but sometimes these things can't be helped. So go to part 2, and there's more there. See you on the flip side.